Well, hello, everybody. I'm going to ask that everyone head on over, if you're at this table, so we can go ahead and get started. Welcome to Boise City Hall. For those of you that are visiting, nice to see you all. For purposes of today's meeting, we're not going to take a roll, so I will acknowledge for the city that we have a quorum of city council members.
And Mayor McLean, I will also acknowledge quorum for the Ada County Highway District. Thank you.
Thank you. So just before we kick things off, we've got an agenda probably that you've got in front of you. We've got 4 things on the agenda. Several of us have things starting at 2 or shortly after, so I'm going to try really hard to keep us on time. I just want to acknowledge yesterday, the ACHD Commission had questions of Valley Regional Transit with regard to the RAISE grant. And it's my hope that in the next week, we can be helpful in answering some of those questions. But I appreciate the level of, the letter of support that the commission had already proposed to provide. And working in partnership, Mary and I have been really focused on making sure our agencies are working in partnership. And we're excited to hear about the RAISE grant that you're putting in competition with our RAISE grant that we've also been willing to provide a letter of support for on
Absolutely.
The city's behalf for your work. So I just want to thank you for that support and look forward to being as helpful as we can as you seek to have other questions answered. Thanks.
Mayor McLean, and thank you very much for your kind words. And we certainly value our partnership and look forward to moving forward and collaborating even more.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And with that, it looks like Director Wong, you've got I'm sorry, I have a mint in my mouth, so I'm having trouble speaking. You've got the first item.
Thank you. And Madam Mayor, thank you again for the host. It's always great to see you and be part of this tremendous team going forward. Noting the time, I will go quickly. For those that would like a copy of the presentation, we'll be more than happy to send it. There is a lot in here, and like I said, we'll go quickly through it. Stacy, thank you. Next slide. What I thought I'd do is give you an oversight of where we are and where we may be going. This is 2021 expenditures across all of Ada County. The blue is revenue collected. The red is expenditures that the commission has directed into different cities in Ada County. As you can see, they've done a very good job on balancing all those dollars across the county. Next slide, please. For 2022, that's our budget. It is we are doing incredibly well on executing all those dollars across the board, and of course, we'll keep you briefed on where we are. Next slide, please. I thought I'd share with you the current inventory, or what I like to call the current challenge. You'll know a common theme right there, and that's and growing across the board. That's what it looks like for Ada County right now on all operations. Next, please. I thought, okay, Stacy, just go through all of them, please, on this one. There we go.
Oops, sorry. There we go.
To share with you what we see on a daily basis for the last, since 2017 going forward, this is the increase in development applications, plan submittals, impact fees, you name it, across the board. And I wanted to share with you specifically Boise on the growth that we're seeing in all areas when it comes down to impacts into Ada County. Next, please. If you'll look at this, the green hashed on this part of North Boise is what we already know is entitled and such. You can see there's a lot of land and a lot of potential or upcoming development in these areas. Next slide, please. The red hashed is what you're seeing in the south. Again, these are already entitled development that all of us will be dealing with as we continue to move forward into the future. Next slide. And so I wanted to quickly go through the integrated 5-year work plan. It's composed of $900 million plus in dollars for 529 total projects going forward. And as you can see from the slide, that's what the commission has, through all of our partners, collaboration, have put into this upcoming integrated 5-year work plan. Next slide, please. To break it down, just to show you where the dollars are currently allocated, as you can see, and by our statutory requirements, Majority of these dollars are put into capital investment programs across the board. Next slide. And as we break it down a little bit more, community programs has continued to grow here at the Ada County Highway District. And as you can see, that's the end of the trail. So 905 million over the next 5 years. That's the plan, and that's where we're allocating those dollars in those categories. Next slide, please. So by program, it's always good to have a big bar chart or a circle and such. That's what it looks like when it's all said and done. As you can see, a majority of those dollars are in capital investments. Next slide, please. Boise specific. And again, I'll run through these quickly. There are a lot of programs here, and if you'd like the specifics, I'm more than happy to send you the presentation. But just for Northwest Boise, next. Next. Boise North. Next. Next. Downtown Boise. Next. East End. Next. West Bench. Next. Next. Central Bench. Next. Next. Southwest. Next. Next. And the ending with the Barber Valley. Now, we're sharing these, all the specific cities for their specific areas and such, so that everybody knows what the great collaboration has produced when it comes down to all of your staffs and of course, all of you in putting this together. So, Madam Mayor, I have hit my mark exactly. You said 10 minutes, 10 after, and there it is.
Well, thank you, Director. Appreciate it. Before I ask Bree to join us to discuss and present the Pathways Plan, I wanted to introduce Tim Keene to those of you that haven't yet met him. Tim's our new Planning and Development Services Director. I know you've got to head to something else. I wasn't sure if you wanted to say a couple things or what the plan was.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Nice to meet everybody. And I just got here a few weeks ago and came from Atlanta, Georgia, of course, and spent 7 years there. Look forward to working with you and in Boise and the Treasure Valley in a growing place dealing with mobility, as y'all have one of those sets of responsibilities that no city yet has figured out. So I'm looking forward to being here with you to try to do it here and like they haven't anywhere else. So thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Tim.
Madam Mayor, could I ask Bruce just one quick question, comment? I look forward to seeing the PowerPoint that you just shared, because I would like to look at some of those details. On that first slide, when you showed the expenses and revenues, Could you split out for us which of those revenues are federal and which ones are local that are being expended in the various places?
I can
would
do
be
that and I'll have
helpful
it to you. You bet.
Especially given the new bill and all of the new federal money that we're likely to get, it'd be good to understand how that's all going.
We'll have that to you shortly.
Thank you.
All right, Bree.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, Madam President, we're here today to present an update on our Pathways Master Plan, which we were before you with last spring, at least to the commission for an update as we were kicking off our spring engagement. So now we're here on the other side and we have an overview to present to you. So our Pathways Plan, as you know, the goal of this plan is to develop a robust system of off-street walking and biking pathways to connect our residents without relying on a vehicle. The plan proposes 112 miles of new pathway projects, which would put 76% of Boiseans in front or in a 10-minute walk of a pathway. Right now, that number sits around 10%. And here you'll see the full map of the proposed pathway network. Your staff was incredibly helpful in this process. We were able to overlay your regional low stress network to show the full picture of pathways in Boise and the impact that this plan has when paired with the work that you all do at the district. On the city side, February was the adoption date for City Council. And in the months since City Council adopted this plan, our team has started identifying the first few projects for scoping and implementation, and we continue to work on that. This is pulled directly from our plan, and in this process, it shows how we identified some of the ways our two agencies might expect to work together. For example, where off-street pathways connect to the on-street network, how we might reflect that in our project request to you and our comments on projects, things like that, how we might work together when these situations arrive. So I have Dave Rader with me here today, and next he's going to take you through some of the examples of these types of projects where on-street meets off-street. And then he'll show you some examples directly from the plan of where those cases occur. So Dave, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Bree. Hello, everyone. Dave Rader, Transportation Planner. So we see 4 areas or categories in which we can collaborate with ACHD to build the pathway network. And one of these areas is where an off-street pathway intersects an on-street or ACHD road or an on-street crossing. There's also pathway segments that are critical along arterial roadways, and areas we'd like to see the low stress bike network expanded or augmented, and areas of opportunity in unopened right of way. Oops. So here's an example of where we could supplement the low stress bike network. So here we're looking at Cole Road, and on the left side of the screen is the Spalding Ranch site. And down below on the bottom side, you'll see Kingston. Kingston is currently not on ACHD's low stress bike network, but adding that to the network would link up a pathway there on the south side of the screen.
So just to clarify, sorry, so the green is the pathway, and so the purple, if we worked with ACHD for that, would then connect folks from Cole to the pathway.
That's
what
correct.
this means. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and here we have example of a pathway crossing an ACHD road. So we're looking at Collister Drive in between, I guess on the bottom side of the screen is State Street. And then to the north, you have Bloom Street, and there where the red circle is a pathway crossing. So another area of collaboration there. Here we have Cole Road, north of Franklin. On the left side of Cole Road there is Boise Town Square Mall. And the blue line represents a arterial road where we see a multi-use path would really link up some off-street pathways and enhance the network. And here's an example of unopened right-of-way. So you have the Boise Bike Park on the top of the screen, Reserve Street, Fort Boise, all on the top side of the screen. On the bottom, you have McKinley Street. And there is a unopened right-of-way there. And also an existing pathway next to the fire station there on Reserve. So opportunity there to enhance the network. And I believe ACHD is looking at this connection in the Franklin Street Bikeway, and something we've already been coordinating with ACHD staff on. So next steps incorporate on-street elements of these 4 categories into our 5-year work plan requests. Prior to the next joint meeting, coordinate on ACHD's policy for multi-use paths in new developments. And more specifically, I think development policy allows for a 5-foot detached or 7-foot attached sidewalk, but trying to get multi-use pathways added to that policy. Low stress bikeway additions and unopened right-of-way. I will stand for questions.
Madam Mayor. Quick question. Thank you. It seems like there's one more category that we ought to be thinking about, whether. we
Could
can
you
work
use your
on-
mic so that those that are zooming in can hear?
Sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah, I always forget. I can't turn around. It seems like there's perhaps one more category we ought to be thinking about partnering on. And that is where a multi-use path off-road, but parallel to the road can take the place of what is really hard to achieve on-road. And the example I would think of most readily is the Glenwood as it goes down the hill from Goddard to Chinden. It's going to be very, very difficult to get anything on that roadway, especially for bikes. But there is an opportunity, I think, to get a pathway up the hill from the intersection at the bottom along the hillside to the west of Fred Meyer there. There's already a desire trail there that many, many people use, and it seems like a perfect opportunity. Now, yes, it's a multi-use pathway. Yes, it's off-roadway, but it replaces a facility that you otherwise might want to try to build, which is some way up that hill. So as you approach your policy, I guess I would appreciate it if you would look at that as another category that we could potentially partner on.
Madam President.
Commissioner Pickering. There she is.
Thank you. I just wanted to applaud the city staff for their work and the leadership of the city council and the mayor's office for this. And I think those examples were completely spot on, in addition to President Clegg's additional example that we could partner. I think this is fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
I have a question about the, are these treated as parking?
Can you have Jim use the microphone?
I think you might need to turn it on. We turn them on.
There we
and
go.
off.
There.
The question is, are these treated as park enhancements and so eligible for impact fees that you charge for public parks? Is this incorporated into those? Be interesting to know.
Sure, Madam Mayor, Commissioner Hanson. I don't know specifically about the impact fee component, but we're hoping that these will be designed as context sensitive as possible. So in areas where they go through a park, they'll match whatever that park landscape is. If it makes sense, if it's next to a roadway for it to be concrete, it will do that. But we're exploring a lot of funding opportunities that could change that as well.
Great. Yeah, because I know a number of your park enhancements are paid for by impact fees. Of course, our system doesn't allow us to use this And so that's a big difference. But I'd like to see us working closely together so that we can have shared funding to maximize the leveraging of that funding. It just doesn't make sense that we keep them separate. I would encourage you also to reach out. Each of the 5 commissioners are very involved in the development of the specific projects in our districts. We're very tuned into where the connectivity gaps are. So reaching out to each of us to say, where is it you're early on as we update the 5-year plan, which would really help a lot. And then the last question or comment is related to funding, because I know the legislature has prohibited our ability and your ability to use our eminent domain, our authorities when trying to connect pathways if there's a gap. But it doesn't restrict our ability to use funds for that. And I know we've actually helped complete a piece of the Greenbelt years ago with ACHD funds. So I would really invite figuring out ways where we can partner and make those communications as early as possible. We're very committed to trying to make cars connect on connectivity of streets for cars. So we need to provide that same sort of commitment to the connectivity of pathways, because when they're connected, then people use them. When they're not connected, it's a pathway to nowhere. So I would
Absolutely.
encourage that.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Madam President, one of the things I think that's going to be really helpful for us all to be working on together is that there is a map that's already in place of potential pathways that are identified, and they're really kind of identified in 2 different ways. One is, here are high feasibility ones that we think are some of our lower hanging fruit, and other ones that are really high priority ones. And some of the high priority ones are really ones that lack other infrastructure or other real safe places to go. So you can think about areas in South Boise, areas close to some of our major roads, Franklin, Overland, where there are some really, really difficult crossings. And because you are in districts and you have folks who live in your areas, they have a map right now that already identifies where some of these pathways might be. And so it's really important, I think, that we look at this at a really, really long-term lens, knowing that some of these pathways aren't going to come overnight, but really trying to figure out what are the areas that we can get started to tackle some of that low-hanging fruit, have some proof of concept, show how effective it can be, so that long-term we can look at some of our bigger projects as development comes. But right now, I think you all are in a really unique position in that you have folks who live in your areas who already can have a preview of what some of this might look like. And they're probably already thinking about some of those discussions. So that's something that we're really excited to work on everyone with, and to make sure that we are trying to find those low-hanging fruit, but not forgetting about those high priority areas, and working hard to build those long-term projects out there.
Is there anything further on this topic? Thank you both.
Next, we will have a master street map update presentation by Edinson Bautista. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor McLean, City Council, and ACHD Commission. My name is Edinson Bautista, ACHD Senior Transportation Planner. In today's meeting, staff will provide an overview on the Master Street Map update process. The Master Street Map was originally adopted on January 27, 2010, and last amended on October 28, 2020. The Master Street Map update is conducted in a biannual basis, or every 2 years. The Master Street Map complies with Idaho Code Section 6765-17, Future Acquisition Map, which recommends the adoption of a map to designate the land proposed for acquisition. In accordance with ACHD Policy 3111, the 3 primary purposes of the Master Street Map are: define a shared vision of the future roadway network between ACHD and its partner agencies based on approved comprehensive plans and street topologies. Establish a county-wide right-of-way preservation map and establish an existing and future collector network map. Policy established that the master street map is not intended to be a regulatory document, but rather a planning tool that informs the decision-making process of ACHD and its partner agencies. The information captured in the master street map should be used by ACHD as input into the scoping and conceptual design of roadway projects, and in the development process as a guide for right-of-way acquisition, collector network requirements, and specific road features required through development. In no way do the features and dimensions adopted in the master street map constitute final design decisions for ACHD capital projects or create entitlements for development approvals. All final decisions will be made through the ACHD project development process or the official development review process. The master street map is built upon several studies like the 2012 South Meridian Transportation Network Analysis and the 2009 Southwest Boise Transportation Plan, as well as in conjunction with the city's adopted comprehensive plans and updates. This ensures that the master street map amendment and updates align with the city's and county's vision. The master street map, beyond displaying the road network and its topologies, it includes information related to the road existent condition with the number of existing lane, the road plan number of lanes, the right-of-way required, parking, comments, and related studies. ACHD policy 3111.3 establish amendment procedures for the master street map. One is through the ACHD standard development review process, which is the vehicle for processing and commenting on requests to amend the master street map associated with new development. Second is through a large-scale city or county-initiated comprehensive plan change or sub-area plan. Within these procedures, policy established step-by-step procedures that led either to the approval or denial of the master street map modification. The changes identified through this procedure become effective upon approval of the ACHD Commission and are not constrained to the updated 2-year cycle. As next steps, staff will continue coordination with multiple outreach efforts with the cities and county, following with additional work session during the spring and summer, and come back in front of the Commission for adoption consideration. With this, I conclude my presentation. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Edinson. Are there any comments or questions for Edinson while he's here? Captive audience.
Madam Mayor, Ms.
Go
President, Madam
ahead.
President. Question, and maybe this is for staff, or maybe it's for the commission, I'm not sure. So when there's initial outreach that's done to the city, and then the city typically follows up with comments or a letter of some sort. And I guess my question is, what happens when ACHD receives those comments, and how are those compliments integrated into that plan? Is it advice? Is it something that is, how is that leveraged as far as moving forward?
Mayor McLean, President May, and City Council. So as we work with the staff members, we receive the request and we do an internal review with our different departments within, like our development and technical services, to review how development would have impact those specific requests. But at the same time, after we do a specific review, those reviews, we go back to the city, review with them our findings, and then we determine a path forward to whether this request would need to take a different direction, or it should need further study to make sure that it moved forward to the implementation into the master street map. So through that end, we after we received the initial request, the city of Boise sent us a official letter, which then later is reviewed through the ACHD Commission as well.
And Madam President, Madam Mayor, just to follow up there. So just to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly, we reach out to the city provides some comments and some feedback. Staff begins working together to kind of figure out how this might be implemented, where it might be integrated. Then you follow back up with the city, and then eventually it goes to the commission on whether or not they adopt those recommendations from the two different staffs. Did I kind of get that?
Correct.
Correct. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam President, and
Commissioner Hanson.
yeah, and just it's perfect timing because the city has already provided specific requests in a letter we received on March 17th. I was hoping maybe Edinson would go over those requests, but perhaps we don't have enough time. But my assumption, and it's my position, that these should be incorporated into the master street map because they reflect the city's view of where the comprehensive planning process is going. You're more familiar with development patterns and what's in the works than the transportation agency is, and that these should be incorporated into them. And it shouldn't take a huge amount of effort on behalf of the city to try and find out if in fact they are being incorporated. No, and if for some reason staff has a difference of opinion, my view is they just take it up to the commission and to the council members and say, okay, do you think this should be redesignated? But the way in which I was told when I suggested some changes to the master street map was this is entirely the city's responsibility to bring these to us. And so the city has done that. City of Boise has. I don't know if the other cities have done this. And so the March 17th letter, as you know, because you guys signed it or sent it, should be incorporated into that. And there's one thing I want us to be really clear at. The master street map is really, really critical, and it does have a lot of cost consequences. While it's not a guarantee that this is going to be the design, this is going to be the ultimate configuration. It also doesn't say that development's entitled to have these. But what happens is that we then move forward in acquiring right of way. And that's a lot. I mean, that's the use of our eminent domain power to take private property in order to anticipate we might be building it this way because the master street map has given us that indication we might be doing this. The other is that then development comes to rely on that. Even though it's not a guarantee, it's not an entitlement, development then says, eventually we're going to have this configuration of these roads. And so they start spending private money and start lining up. So there actually is a significant financial consequence to putting something in the master street map or not changing something when something has in fact changed within the city's comprehensive plan or their vision. My biggest concern with respect to the work Boise's doing with its new rezoning ordinance is that things will change with respect to activities along those, especially around activity centers and mixed use. And that needs to be reflected in the master street map. And if it isn't, then it will create tremendous costs in trying to make those align. So what I really appreciate is the city acted and has already gotten very specific about some of the things they want in this. And it's my view that those will be in the master street map. And that's for some huge difference of opinion that we have to work out at this level, at the policymaker level, that we would resolve.
Thank you. Edinson, I know you're not prepared to speak to that letter today with a presentation, but if we could get a follow-up as to the status of that and where we are in addressing the letter that we did receive from the city of Boise, that would be helpful. And I'm glad that the point was brought up too, that there's no, as these changes take place, rezoning, et cetera, reach out to us. There's no time constraint or specific period of time that you can only submit something to us. So this is ongoing. It's a fluid process. So we would encourage you, as those changes that Commissioner Hanson referenced, something changes, please reach out to the commission.
Madam
or staff.
President.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, and just a little bit of follow-up on the conversation. I appreciate that you will get back to us, but I guess I would note that the process right now is pretty reactive and that there's nothing in it that triggers any kind of a comprehensive review. When this was first developed, it was developed in concurrent with the Livable Streets Design Guide. You've recently made at least one change that is pretty significant to that, and that is no more on-street bike lanes on very big arterials, but off-street multi-use paths. So it seems to me that there might be a time when we'd have a little more comprehensive process where we'd look not just at the master street map, but also at the Livable Streets Design Guide and see if those things are keeping up with the development pattern that we're seeing today, especially as we begin to work through our new zoning code and our desire to create more mixed-use activity centers, many of which are on arterial roadways, is that Livable Streets Design Guide and the accompanying master streets map in keeping with the zoning changes that we're proposing. I don't know what that process is. I know but it's a bigger process than asking us to produce something for you that then you react to, or vice versa. I think it's a more collaborative process of some kind, and would propose that we think about that because of all of the changes that have occurred in the last 10 years since it was first produced. In addition, I guess I look forward to seeing the response to our letter, I guess, and it would be good to make sure that as we partner on these things, that the partnership does have a good two-way communication channel. And if we send something, we get something back, and vice versa. If you send us something, we make sure and get you something back, so we all know what the answer is to the questions we've been asking each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Clegg. Timely and very, very good suggestions. So we can certainly follow up on that and do something going forward. Take a look at that, Edinson. All right.
Madam President
Thank
and
you.
Madam Mayor, I just have one thought to tag on to that. So last night, we had one of our zoning code rewrite outreach meetings with the North End Neighborhood Association and East End Neighborhood Association. And this very topic came up. Somebody asked, how is ACHD collaborating with the city as you move forward in this zoning code rewrite, and how do those two things interact? And so I think that much like what Council President Clegg was saying, us making a zoning code, a new zoning code, and then having ACHD react to that might not be as productive as having ACHD at the table with our staff as we're working through that zoning code update. And so I guess I would just encourage that, encourage greater collaboration, because transportation is so much of what we're trying to build into the zoning code, and making sure that people can get around in multiple ways, not just by cars, so that we can reduce congestion in our city. And so I would just really ask for that to happen. I'm not totally sure how that happens, but if we can just keep it all top of mind.
Yes, absolutely. Again, another very, very good and timely suggestion, and to be involved and be part of that dialogue going forward would certainly be beneficial to all parties. So we'll definitely take a look at that and work forward. So thank you. Another note, Edinson.
Madam President, Madam Mayor, if there's not another question, I might have one more, but I've already asked one. So I don't know if anyone else. All right. So I guess just to kind of be a little bit more clear on the process. So we submit comments or requests for the update on the master street map, and our staff works on taking those into account. I'm going to assume that sometimes maybe the commission doesn't adopt all of those updates. Maybe that's a wrong assumption, but maybe that's happened before. So I guess my question is, so when we send comments or requests, and an example might be like in the last one, we've asked to reclassify a couple neighborhood residential arterials in South Boise. If the commission decides that they don't want to update those, or if staff decides that they don't want to update those, does that come back to council for a conversation between council members and commissioners? Or does it, if it's not the will of staff and if it's not the will of the commission, does that potentially not get adopted without there being another conversation?
No, Council Member Halliburton. No, absolutely. There would be a follow-on dialogue before something like that would take place. And I think Edinson touched on that it's a collaborative process. So you submit, staff takes a look at it, they meet with your staff, look at the projects, the path forward, and then there's an agreement there. So that you would definitely be part of that process.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam President and Madam Mayor,
Commissioner
I
Hanson?
just want to clarify, my experience in the past is that hasn't been as explicit as what we're trying to make clear now, is that yes, that has to be part of the
Yeah.
process. And Councilmember Clegg pointed out specifically if we want, we aren't too sure about a specific area, but we want to have a process to drill down. Your letter specifically identifies Southwest Boise, which is the one area where there's a lot of moving parts and there's some growth and a major investment with the Syringa local development down there. You have asked specifically to do a process to drill down and look at the Southwest Boise. I think that we owe the city a commitment to say we will engage in that process, and we will engage in that process before we update or we move forward on spending any more money in that area, because I think that's really critical. And I'd like to see that being done in the next 9 months or a year so that we can make it clear, because that is your request rather than just to sort of leave it. So the letter the city has proposed is a broader process with Southwest Boise, and then a series of very specific requests that probably don't need a complex process. It's just these would be to make it more consistent with our comprehensive plan. So I appreciated your comment, because I think in the past it hasn't been that clear and deliberate. There is an expectation that it will come to the commission and that it will come to the council before final decisions are made.
Absolutely. I've never had any other opinion than that.
Yeah, and I should note that I'm not being accusatory. I'm simply asking
Yeah.
a question as far as the process.
Clarification.
I'm probably clarification. I'm
Absolutely.
probably not as familiar with it as some other folks in the room. So knowing how that process works just makes
Those
it
conversations are
really easy
key.
for me.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you very much. Doesn't look like any other questions. All right. Thank you very much, Edmondson. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. All right. ACHD raise grant update presentation by Ryan Head and Tom Furch.
Madam Mayor, President May, Ryan Head, Planning Manager at ACHD. I am the liaison to the city, and it's always a pleasure to see your faces, in particular to have seen them in person again recently. I thought it was better today, though, to introduce the real expert, who's the guy behind all the money and all the grant writing. And so Tom Furch from my team will be making this presentation.
Thank you. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me get myself squared away here. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor McLean and members of the Boise City Council and President May and members of the ACHD Commission. A little higher there. There we go.
I just want to make sure that Alexis, are you able to hear? Great. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for checking. My name is Tom Furch and I am ACHD's Transportation Funding Coordinator. And today I would like to talk to you about ACHD's fiscal year 2022 Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, or RAISE grant application. RAISE is a Federal Highway Administration grant program that was formerly known as BUILD, and prior to that it was TIGER. RAISE is also very different this year with a focus on sustainability and equity. And let me tell you how this focus led ACHD to the Access to Opportunity project application. For the 22 RAISE grant, the supporting legislation set aside $75 million for planning grants, but also a minimum grant of $5 million. The $5 million threshold well exceeded funds needed to plan and design any single ACHD project that's in the integrated 5-year work plan. And something else new this year was the identification of historically disadvantaged communities. To meet the administration's Justice 40 goal of delivering 40% of overall federal investment in climate and clean energy to disadvantaged communities, the Federal Highway Administration developed a map to identify such communities. Using census data and OMB analysis, the criteria used are transportation access, health, environmental, economic, resilience, and social. Projects within historically disadvantaged communities are favored and may qualify for 100% federal funding. So let me present to you this year's RAISE grant application. Using Federal Highways Mapping Program, 3 historically disadvantaged communities were identified in Ada County that formed a contiguous project area. So as you can see on this map, at the top portion is Garden City, and it is separated from the other 2 by the bench. South of Garden City is Boise West Bench, which is separated by the connector from the south, the Central Bench. So these 3 communities have physical barriers that separate them from each other and restrict access to other parts of the Boise area and Garden City area. And then they've also been identified as historically disadvantaged by the criteria that was mentioned earlier. With the project boundary set, ACHD identified 12 active transportation type projects that are in ACHD's 2022-26 integrated 5-year work plan. The combined 12 projects improve 10.5 miles of ACHD right-of-way and have an estimated planning and design cost of $5.6 million. These 12 active transportation projects are titled Access to Opportunity, and they will reduce the negative impacts of the transportation barriers in these 3 communities. With a RAISE planning grant, ACHD will be able to perform the necessary environmental or NEPA work and design work. Once design is completed, ACHD will be in the position to build the Access to Opportunity projects as federal funds become available. Here's a list of the Access to Opportunity segments that were on the map. The project will plan and design active transportation projects to remove barriers for people who walk and ride bicycles. Project planning for pedestrians will include designing sidewalks and safe, enhanced pedestrian crossings where they currently do not exist, creating connections to transit routes, and bringing older sidewalks and crossings up to ADA standards. Planning for people who ride bikes will include providing safe, low-stress enhanced bike lanes and connections to transit routes and recreation. These projects meet the goals of the RAISE grant program, and when built, will provide residents in the 3 disadvantaged communities active transportation options to jobs, healthcare, education, transit, grocery, recreation, in the Boise River Greenbelt. In addition, these projects will explore private partnerships, environmentally friendly stormwater solutions, and innovative designs. Here's a list of the state and municipal leaders and organizations that have provided a letter of support for this application. And ACHD would like to thank the city of Boise for their letter of support. RAISE applications are due on April 14th. We are finalizing the application this week with the goal of submitting the application on April 12th. That's our goal. It's interesting to note, earlier conversation, Councilwoman Clegg mentioned the Desire Path on Glenwood, and that is the picture, the second one from the left is a cyclist ascending to the top of the bench there on Glenwood and Mountain View. And I will stand for questions.
Thank you very much, Tom. Any questions or comments for Tom regarding the grant? Council President Clay.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Tom. Good to see the presentation of this. I've been hearing about it, but had not seen some of the details. So I guess, it is where it is, and we support it and we want it to go forward. I wonder if there are ways to partner in the future if you're successful in extending some of these, and if you're not successful in building another grant that might include some other things. So the 2 things specifically that I saw that I'd heard about but didn't know if we're going to be in the grant are a crossing of Chinden at 43rd. I think I saw one at 38th and one at 50th. but not at 43rd. And I thought that there was some discussion of that. Maybe I missed it. The other is, I think you know that we have approached Compass in the past about a pedestrian crossing of the connector somewhere between Liberty and Allenbaugh. If you're going to improve the connection on Allenbaugh, it seems like it would behoove us to think about, is that the right place to connect over the connector? And is that a future project? So I bring up those two because I think they both provide not just those connections internally within these neighborhoods, but the broader connection for these neighborhoods to get to some of our big employment centers. If folks can get down the hill from the West Bench and get across Chinden relatively near Veterans Memorial Parkway, I know there's also potentially another pedestrian bridge there. They can access the things on State Street and vice versa. If folks can get across the connector without having to use a car, they can access the jobs at the mall area, at the hospital, and all of those jobs I think are really important ones for folks to be able to access. So my only comment is great project, really appreciate you taking the ball and running with it on the equity end of it. And I think hopefully this is just the beginning of what we could do in this area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Madam President and Madam Mayor.
Any comments on that?
I just wanted to inform Councilwoman Clegg that the 43rd crossing is currently funded with TAP funds. We're in the process of designing it. So it didn't show up on this map because it'll be hopefully completed by then. Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Councilmember Woodings.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Tom. This seems like it just feels like there's so much federal funding out there. I'm really glad to see the ACHD is working to take advantage of some of it as well. I saw on your list of folks who had offered letters of support, the Central Foothills Neighborhood Association, which I thought was an interesting neighborhood association for this. And it brought up the question, have you been able to reach out to the neighborhood associations where these projects are located, like the Central Bench and Winstead Park and maybe some others?
Madam President, Madam Mayor, Councilwoman Woodings, yes, we with city staff was very helpful to help us reach out and connect, and it was kind of interesting who was interested in responding. We could probably do in the future a more aggressive approach to getting in contact, but it was a matter of the amount of time, the short turnaround time.
Yeah, very fair. I'm happy to hear that you were able to work with city staff. We've been working very hard at strengthening those neighborhood association connections over the past few years. So I'm glad that that's working out for you all as well and that we could collaborate there. Thank you.
Yeah, they're vital. Yeah, absolutely.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank you so much for focusing on communities that are really vulnerable when it comes to making use of transportation that really requires them to put their bodies at risk. And it's not a choice. It's not a lifestyle choice. It's a necessity. And, poor people can't afford to have accidents. And it really swells my heart to think of folks making a concerted effort to make sure that their needs are met. They don't have lobbyist groups to advocate for them. And so just very deeply from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for working in service to them.
Thank you very much. We appreciate those kind words. Tom? Any closing remarks? Any other
Madam
questions?
President.
Oh, Commissioner Pickering.
Thank you. I just want to do one point of clarification. Mayor McLean opened up with stating that this was in competition with VRT and Boise, the city of Boise's application for State Street. And I just want to clarify that this is Tom mentioned this, but this is a planning grant versus the VRT State Street one is design and implementation. So they're different buckets of funding, which we were really intentional about making sure that we weren't in competition with each other, and we brought as much federal dollars into our shared communities.
Thank you. I think she's aware.
Yeah, Madam President, I actually was going to jump in and correct myself because Bree clarified as well that this is a planning grant. And so I think that there's great opportunity to continue the conversation, even if it's submitted this way, if there are different connections or things that we could do together to complement each other, given that this is in its planning stages rather than a capital request, and then prepare for the capital request that might include a little bit more. And we are supportive of this because, as it's been noted, I want to talk a little bit about traffic congestion and different ways of getting to work to support economic development. But in this one in particular, appreciate that the agency saw opportunity with this federal grant program that is targeting at-risk neighborhoods. And we've got lots of them here too. I mean, we've seen debate, discussion as to whether or not targeting like that is appropriate, but we know that in our own community, it is both appropriate and very, very needed. And when we think about, I appreciate this planning grant because the agency is making it clear that beyond planning for folks to get to work by cars, it's important to plan for folks to be able to get to work, to get their kiddos to school, to get to the grocery store with a network that makes it possible to bike, to walk, and for those that have accessibility issues as well, to be able to move safely. That creates economic opportunity for our residents. And it's for that reason that we were really happy to support this in the same way that we've made supporting the VRT RAISE grant a top priority for the city, because we have to create ways for people within our road networks to get to work that don't have cars. And in doing that, we're also lessening the congestion of those that do get to work by cars. And so as we look at all of these things, how we work together, for us, it really is in that opportunity lens of how can we create a system that recognizes our region is growing, there are infrastructure needs, that includes ways to get fewer people on the roads, get them safely to work in different ways, to lighten up the pressure on those that do use the roads for their cars. And so it's for those reasons that VRT's RAISE grant remains a priority, and that we want to keep working with you from a planning perspective to be supportive of your grant requests as well.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Madam Mayor and President May. I want to just give a huge amount of credit to Commissioner Pickering, because in the process of identifying this, I think it was her leadership more than any who really understood the demographics of the neighborhood she represented, if it's not surprising. And she said, we can do this, we ought to do this. And it was her leadership that pushed the agency and the rest of the commission to look at this. And because ACHD doesn't look at equity and demographics, the kind of things the city does when we decide where we're going to put projects. We don't measure those. We predominantly measure how cars move. That's our predominant measurement. And it should come as no surprise when you look at the map that the neighborhoods that qualify are along two state highways, Chinden and the connector. And that's something that should also be a lesson to us, that the way in which we build transportation infrastructure, big, huge transportation infrastructure, can have a very devastating impact on neighborhoods, cut them off, make it very difficult to cross. There's a picture, I think it's the right picture. Right now, people can't cross on Emerald over the connector. It cuts neighborhoods off. And when that happens, we don't get investment in those neighborhoods. And so they have further and further away to go to schools and to shops and to other things. And so I think it's really important that we not then create other places by building huge transportation, huge highways, without understanding exactly what the implications are, the long-term implications are for private investments in those neighborhoods, and that we preserve the ability for future generations to keep reinvesting in those and not cut them off. So I think it's really important. I really appreciated early, we were up against the deadline, but Commissioner Pickering was the one that really, to my impression, lit the fire that got this going and deserves the credit.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Madam President, I can be really quick. I just want to commend both the staff, commissioners, and the leadership over at ACHD for this grant application. It's a great application. There's some specific things like connecting U-Stick through Garden City to the Greenbelt where you're working in multiple jurisdictions, and those types of connections are just awesome to see. And that I think that really helps us build those partnerships going forward. There's also some really cool spots on there that are going to be a great overlay with the Pathways Master Plan. There was a connection on Irving that goes right over the top of one of the pathways that we had identified, or right next to, I should say, or intersects one of those pathways. And so it's going to be really, really exciting, to see something like this get built out with, other applications getting built out and other master plans in place. So just a really, really great job and super exciting. And I'm glad that those tie so closely together. So yeah, great job.
Very good. All right. Super. I think we're done. We're right on.
Well, that was the last item. We were just a couple minutes over. I just wanted, before we break, is there any questions from staff in terms of next steps, follow-ups? And it's fine if the answer is no. I just want to do this now if there is.
Madam Mayor, if I
Yes.
could very quickly to Councilman Clegg question. 95% of the jurisdictional revenue is local. 5% was federal. We'll have specific numbers for you next week.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all. With that, I'll say that the council is adjourned.
All right. And thank you very much to you, Mayor McLean, and the Boise City Council for having us, and staff from the city of Boise and ACHD for your presentations today. We've enjoyed it. It was nice to be here in person and see everybody, not just up on a screen. So thank you all very much. And with that, I will call the meeting adjournment for the ACHD site. Thank you.